They fired 1,400 workers. Canada slashed 25%. Trump's tariffs backfired. GM closed one factory. Canada closed all doors. The result, total disaster. Breaking tonight, General Motors just learned the cost of abandoning Canada. Industry Minister Melanie Joly isn't offering polite requests anymore. She's delivering ultimatums. "We will fight for the auto workers," she announced this week, her voice cutting through the diplomatic silence that used to define Canada's trade posture. For us, it's extremely important that General Motors abides by its commitment. A lot of Canadian taxpayers' money was involved. Now it's time for you to be there for Canadians. Translation: Ottawa just told Detroit's auto giants that the era of quiet cooperation is finished. And what General Motors didn't anticipate is that Canada's retaliation would hit harder than any boardroom projection ever predicted. More than 1,400 workers walked out of General Motors' county plant in Ingersoll, Ontario this fall. Not because they wanted to, because General Motors decided that building electric vans in Canada was no longer profitable. The company called it a corporate efficiency adjustment during weak EV demand. Joly called it what it really was: abandonment. And in the weeks that followed, Ottawa demonstrated exactly what happens when you break promises to a country that once saved you from bankruptcy. But here's what makes this moment different. This isn't just about one shuttered factory or one angry minister. This is about the fundamental restructuring of North American auto production and Canada's refusal to remain the silent junior partner, while Detroit makes decisions that hollow out entire communities. In late October, the Department of Finance Canada made a move that sent shockwaves through boardrooms across Michigan. They slashed General Motors' tariff-free import quota by roughly a quarter. Stellantis got hit even harder, losing nearly half their preferential access after scaling down Canadian production. The message landed like a hammer: build here or pay more. Every vehicle, every component, every single time you cross the border, General Motors executives believed they could quietly wind down BrightDrop production, absorb the public relations hit, and move on. They miscalculated catastrophically. What they triggered instead was a coordinated government response that turned Canada's market access into a weapon, one aimed directly at Detroit's supply chain vulnerabilities. The decision came just days before Prime Minister Mark Carney unveiled his first budget in early November. That budget centered on something Washington claimed to own: economic nationalism. Carney called it the Buy Canadian framework, and it committed $186 million to prioritize Canadian suppliers while establishing a strategic response fund for sectors hammered by Trump's tariffs. Steel, aluminum, and autos topped the list. For decades, Canada operated as Detroit's northern production line: quiet, efficient, reliable. That arrangement worked when trade was predictable, and both sides honored their commitments. But Donald Trump's return to the White House in 2025 tore that system apart, with tariffs ranging from 10 to 100%, targeting everything from cars to steel to aluminum. His administration called it Liberation Day. Canada calls it the moment everything changed. Carney's government stopped playing defense. The Buy Canadian initiative mirrors Washington's own tactics, turning economic pressure into leverage. If the United States uses tariffs to protect its factories, Canada will use market access to protect its workers. And unlike Trump's broad, chaotic approach, Ottawa's retaliation is surgical, precise, devastating. By connecting tariff-free privileges directly to local production levels, Canada rewrote the rules of engagement. It's not anti-American. It's unapologetically pro-Canadian. And the timing couldn't be worse for General Motors. According to a Reuters report on industry forecasts, auto sales in the U.S. and Canada could fall by around 1.8 million vehicles this year if Trump's tariff policies stay in place. Prices on popular SUVs and trucks have climbed as much as 25%. The promise to bring jobs back is dissolving under the weight of higher costs and collapsing consumer demand. American buyers are walking away from dealerships, and the companies that follow Trump's nationalist playbook are now paying for it in lost revenue and stranded inventory. General Motors thought shuttering BrightDrop would be a quiet adjustment, a cost-saving measure during an EV market slowdown. Instead, it detonated a political and economic crisis that now threatens the company's entire Canadian operation. The Kami plant didn't just eliminate hundreds of skilled jobs when it closed. It severed General Motors from a growing clean tech manufacturing ecosystem that Canada is determined to lead. Battery production, critical minerals, electric, drivetrains. Canada is building an integrated supply chain designed to dominate North America's EV future, and General Motors just walked away from it voluntarily. Now the company faces higher import duties on every vehicle it sends north, restricted access to lucrative government contracts, and a public relations disaster in a country whose taxpayers poured billions into saving General Motors during the 2000-2009 financial crisis. Jolie reminded executives of that history this week, and she made it clear that this time Canada expects loyalty in return. If you've watched corporations make promises and then walk away, you know exactly what this moment represents. Jolie gave General Motors 15 days to present a plan for a new model at Kami. Not suggestions, not promises, a plan with timelines, with commitments. As she meets with Unifor workers this month, Ottawa's position is unmistakable. GM owes Canada more than excuses. What GM didn't foresee is how quickly the consequences would cross back over the border. The Kami plant once supplied critical components for U.S. EV fleets. With that pipeline severed and Canada retaliating on import quotas, GM's logistics network is buckling. Dealers in Michigan and Ohio report delivery delays stretching into weeks. Component shortages are driving up costs and leaving empty spots on showroom floors across the Midwest. In trying to save money, General Motors has managed to lose efficiency, credibility, and supply stability. And the very country whose tariffs started this trade war, the United States, is now paying for it through higher prices, slower production, and frustrated customers. Carney's first budget is more than a fiscal document. It's a declaration of economic independence that links industrial policy and national security into a single vision. Canada will no longer function as a branch plan economy, assembling products designed elsewhere and shipping profits south. Factories like Kami symbolize that mission. They connect clean energy, critical minerals, and advanced manufacturing into a single integrated Canadian supply chain. The new Strategic Response Fund is already helping steelmakers in Sault Ste. Marie and Hamilton retool for EV production. If General Motors and Stellantis want to remain competitive in Canada's market, they'll need to invest alongside those Canadian partners, or risk being replaced as Ottawa cultivates new investors from Asia and Europe. When Trump announced his sweeping auto tariffs in April, he boasted that they would bring industrial glory back to America. 7 months later, the data tells a different story. Supply chain disruptions are cutting North American output by roughly 20,000 cars a day, nearly a third of regional capacity. Ford and General Motors stocks are both down sharply since summer. Manufacturing job growth, once a campaign talking point, has stalled for 3 straight months. If you're following how trade wars actually impact working people, this pattern should look familiar. By turning trade into a weapon, Trump handed Canada a strategic opening. And Ottawa's new industrial plan isn't reactionary, it's a counter-strategy. Canada is transforming crisis into leverage, using the shock of American protectionism to accelerate its own self-reliance. The combination of Trump's tariffs and General Motors' withdrawal from Canada is creating a feedback loop of failure. Without Canadian production, General Motors must import more components from Asia, exactly the supply chain Trump wanted to punish, which means, even higher costs once those tariffs apply. Those costs spill directly onto American consumers who are now paying thousands more for mid-size EVs and delivery vans once assembled in Ontario. U.S. dealerships complain of shrinking inventories and unpredictable shipment schedules. The broader North American supply web, once finely balanced across borders, is now tangled in bureaucracy and border costs. Meanwhile, Canada is deepening partnerships with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union, redirecting investment that once flowed exclusively through Detroit. In trying to isolate competitors, Trump has effectively isolated his own producers, and Canada methodically and strategically is capitalizing on every misstep. The fight over General Motors' Kami plant represents more than a factory dispute. It marks the moment Canada stopped accepting the role of junior partner in North American trade. By cutting General Motors and Stellantis' tariff-free privileges, the Carney government demonstrated that economic sovereignty can be exercised with precision, not bluster. For General Motors, the consequences are immediate. Either reinvest in Canada, restore trust with workers who built the company's brand, and integrate into Canada's clean tech future, or watch market share slip away to rivals eager to claim the space General Motors is abandoning. For Trump, the lesson is harsh. His tariff war, launched in the name of American strength, is eroding the very industrial base he promised to rebuild. Supply chains are breaking, prices are rising, jobs aren't returning, and Canada's resurgence was sparked by Washington's aggression. But its future no longer depends on Washington's permission. Jolie's campaign to revive Kami, backed by Carney's long-term industrial vision, signals a new chapter in North American economics. Canada won't just endure Trump's tariffs. It will emerge from them stronger, more independent, and ready to rewrite the rules of continental auto production. General Motors believed it could walk away quietly. Instead, it triggered a transformation, one that may define North America's economic balance for the next generation. And in that transformation, Canada isn't asking for permission anymore. It's demanding respect and backing up those demands with policy that hits exactly where it hurts most. The bottom line, dear viewers, if you're tracking how Canada is rewriting the rules of North American trade, this channel breaks down every move Ottawa makes against Trump's chaos. Hit that like button if you believe workers deserve loyalty from the corporations they once saved. And subscribe because we are covering every development in Carney's strategy to make Canada economically independent. The next chapter is already unfolding.